Welcome to Thriving Kids, the podcast from the Child Mind Institute that helps you raise emotionally healthy kids. I'm Dr. Dave Anderson, clinical psychologist and your host. Today we're diving into a big one. How do I help my child build healthy self-esteem? In a world full of comparison from the classroom to social media, it's not easy for kids to feel confident, capable, and valued just as they are. To help us explore this, I'm joined by Dr. Jenny Louie, a clinical psychologist in our Anxiety Disorders Center based in our San Francisco office. Jenny works closely with younger kids and their families, helping children build confidence, cope with challenges, and develop real resilience through evidence-based care. In this episode, we'll talk about the everyday ways caregivers can support self-esteem, from making space for mistakes, to helping kids find their spark, to balancing high expectations with emotional safety. Jenny brings practical ideas, years of clinical experience, and a deep belief in the power of connection and play to help kids thrive. Let's get into it. So, Jenny, what we want to start today is just thinking about kind of the basic processes by which we build self-esteem. So what are some of the basic concepts you think about when parents bring up the topic where they say, like, I don't know if my kid feels good about themselves, or I don't know if they feel like they've got self-esteem?
Sorry, the lights just went off.
So what you're saying is the first question I opened with was so bad, the lights had to go off. Wait, so okay, Jenny's taking a drink of water. Are the lights motion sensor? Like, were you too still? Okay, so we know that you got to gesticulate with your hands is what we got, right?
Okay, is it okay if I just do that if the lights go off?
So you've been sitting there for 19 minutes, right? And did the lights go off at any point before that?
No.
That's the first time.
So then the lights going off is going to be our cue to end the podcast, is basically what it is. So Jenny, diving in, if we're talking about the topic of self-esteem, what are some of the things that parents are often asking you about when they come in and say, I'm worried that my kid doesn't feel that good about themselves?
Yeah, if they have a lot of negative talk, that worries parents. Like, I'm not good at this, or I'm ugly, or everyone else XYZ, that's when parents get concerned that maybe their child has low self-esteem.
Right.
Also, if they're like really scared to do things, that also is an indicator that they're not like feeling confident in themselves.
Right. So you'll see it through anxiety. You'll also see it through like the ways that a kid says, I don't really feel comfortable doing this, or I don't want to try new stuff, or I don't want to join the team, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely like hesitancy, avoidance. And then you can get more into the kind of more depression realm when they're just starting to really say negative, mean things about themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about how like parents start to build this from an early age, like, let's say that we're just getting to the points where like parents are, interacting with their toddler or, early elementary school years, like kindergarten, first grade. What kinds of things are we looking to set kids up with that maybe contributes to healthy self-esteem down the line?
Yeah, I think one of the important things is making sure to create like a safe environment at home where they can feel loved no matter what they do. Because if there's too much criticism, if there's too much like not good enough, then they start to question themselves. So, the outside world is going to do a fair amount of that.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure your home where you have control, they feel like, yeah, I got this, know, and your parents like believe in you and things like that.
So let's say that, we'll give a few, moments where kids might be in these like early years. Like let's say that, kids at a swim lesson, kids at say a soccer practice or a music practice, or they're at a school event. What kinds of things would you expect to hear from a parent if they're building self-esteem versus a parent who maybe their kid's going to have a little bit more difficulty with self-esteem?
Yeah, I think it's like this real middle line for the parents where it's like, they encourage their kids to keep going, even if they don't really want to and they're scared. And also, you don't want to let them stay home and just avoid it because they don't want to do it. So it's, and you don't want to go too far and like being like, you have to, it's a very important, it's really, finding that balance. So
And if we're talking about like that situation, I mean, like, does it matter how good the kid is? Like, if we're talking about a soccer practice or a swim lesson, like, does it matter if the kid's the best swimmer? Is that something that parents should be striving toward? Because that doesn't seem to be what you're emphasizing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it is important to let the kids know it's not important, like how good they are.
Yeah.
That, it's more important that they try.
Right.
Right. And you try to put them in situations that are the right level for them.
Yeah.
We talk about the zone of proximal development, right? Like you don't want to put them in a very competitive swim class if they're not that good yet.
Right.
Right. So it's finding the right place for them.
Well, so I think you just highlighted more of like the second major factor contributing to self-esteem, which like we've kind of highlighted like three already in this conversation. So like you hit on the notion that like parents want to have this belief that their parent really unconditionally loves them.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, we're exposing them to a wide range of things that they could do. And we want to make sure that they, can take part in all kinds of different activities that helps them discover their passions. And then the last piece is this notion of challenge. Let's talk about that for a second, because you hit on it with zone and proximal development. Like, why is challenge so important?
Challenge is important because they need to see that it's not always easy, that it's not always perfect, that you can bounce back from mistakes or challenges. Because a kid you might think has good self-esteem if they do all easy things and they're like, oh, I'm so good at it. But true self-esteem, true confidence comes from doing the hard stuff and seeing that you survived. And either you could do it or you couldn't do it, but you're still working and putting in that effort.
Right. Well, I keep thinking about like, and this relates to like even yesterday. I was at a swim lesson with my eldest, which is a 9-year-old. As of this particular recording, if we listen to this years and years in the future, the kid might be older. But we're talking about like at a swim lesson, like my 9-year-old isn't necessarily the best swimmer at the swim lesson, but at the same time, I know that what he's being taught in like this group lesson is really challenging. And what I can see is that there's about 6 kids in his lesson, and the teacher is trying to like do a drill where they're doing like a relay together. And as they're doing this relay, they're practicing, and I see like, I'm thinking about the differences in the kids. Like there's one kid in the class that I definitely think got a lot of feedback about how good they were, like kind of early on. And this has contributed to sort of like a low range of emotion regulation for the kid, in the sense that when they fail at stuff, they're like, I don't understand. Like when I'm at home, I'm the best. And then I get in here and there's some challenge, and it's like, I don't like being confronted with the information that I'm not as good, so I'm just going to lose my mind. And then there's like one kid who's developed his whole identity around being the best. And so he like rigs all the competitions. He like challenges other kids to races, but like only in the stroke he wants, at the distance he wants, that he knows he can win. And then there's my son who like, I was really proud of him. And I'm not saying we're always having these victories when we're psychologists and all that kind of stuff, but he got out of the pool and he hadn't been the fastest, but like he remembered one particular part of the relay where he started out behind and then he'd gotten in front of the other swimmer that he was racing in the swim lesson, and like felt really proud of himself for like surmounting that challenge. And I kept thinking to myself, this relates to my conversation with Jenny tomorrow. So I don't know if you have any other particular examples with your own kids of like that concept recently. Like, is there anything you can think of with your own kiddos?
Yeah. I mean, I have a swim lesson example too. So when my daughter started swim, she was very nervous, very scared to start. Just even getting in the pool was hard, and she would cry like bloody murder, and it was very embarrassing because like an indoor pool, so like echoing.
You're saying even psychologists feel embarrassed at their kids' emotionality in public? Amazing.
Yeah.
Keep going. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, actually, like even more in a way, because I think like people are watching me and they might know that I'm a psychologist, so they're like, they want to see what I do.
I think the same thing. So I mean, I have been just even going to swim lessons. There is another CMI employee in this room working on our marketing and communications team who has been at the same swim center with his kid in a swim lesson. And I've thought to myself during it, like, okay, I'm the clinician in the room, and my daughter stayed very regulated during the time that he saw us. So I was like, like this works out. But yes, right. Anyway, keep going. Yes, your challenge.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, she was crying a lot, and the teachers were very sweet and nice, but would just let her stay there and tell me, like, oh, she didn't want to do it. And I'm like,
right.
Okay, but she needs to do it, because the longer she sits there, the longer it gets reinforced that it's okay to not do the lesson.
Completely.
So I had to like work with the management to find a teacher who was okay with a child crying. And just, because they're a parent and they know crying is sometimes part of the process. And I told them to pry her tiny fingers off the side of the pool and walk her up and down the lanes. I know she can handle that. She can cry, but she's just being carried. It's not like they're making her swim or anything, or even put her head under. So anyway, that's just an example of, getting kids past their fear. And then I think she really felt so good after, like when she could do it.
Well, you bring up something amazing that is a really, really tough lesson to learn as a parent, which is that you can kind of like it's this question of like how you push your child with love and support through moments of discomfort. Where like I often say to parents, like if it's on a scale of 0 to 10, like we don't exactly want kids to always be at a 0 to 3, like just totally comfortable and finding it easy, because that's not too much challenge. A 3 to 7 is like totally fine, because often those are some of the most rewarding experiences, even if we ourselves are like quite challenged in those moments and like trying with our patience. And then like we might not push our kid if they're like an 8 or 8 to 10. Like maybe they're like melting down through the floor and they're so nervous about it and they're just so uncomfortable. And we just want to be like, I get it. Like we'll try this again a little bit later. Like we'll come back to it. But like, what do you think about as a parent when you're trying to push your kid through like a moment where there's a reward at the end where like they'll probably feel proud of themselves, but yet everybody's probably watching you and being like, what is that woman doing? Like telling the swim coach to pry her kid's tiny hands off the side of the pool and push them in the water,
Yeah, I know. It's about knowing your kid. Like my daughter, she cries. She's a crier. I am too. And so I just know that like, even though it may look really bad, like she's okay. She's still in that zone of it not being total meltdown. And we had tried many weeks of just letting her, like it wasn't working otherwise, just like letting her get used to it,
Completely. I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like a parent might be able to do that where they say, like, let's let them see if they can go at their own pace and like take that challenge. But at some level, like so much of this is the kind of balance of secure attachment. It's this nurture and structure and this saying of like, I want to nurture you. I want to support you. But I also want you to know that like, I'm going to nudge you. I'm going to nudge you when it's a little bit uncomfortable. I'm going to nudge you when I think you need to challenge yourself. And then I'm going to let you discover that there's actually these moments where you're successful and you can kind of build these skills. And like, if we're talking about the ways that they're going to feel good about themselves, not in terms of like, I'm the best at swimming, but in terms of like doing their best and feeling like they've challenged themselves, feeling proud of themselves, those emotions come through challenge. So on this note, I want to bring up one thing that I think often comes up, which is how do you feel about participation trophies? Let's just go with that. I'm just saying, like, they're a question we get a lot in terms of like parents being like, do you feel like this builds self-esteem?
Right. I do have mixed feelings about those. I feel like they're not necessary. It's sort of similar to the way I feel about like prizes, or like goodie bags.
Yeah.
This is like they're getting so much stuff and they're like kind of they're just like,
right.
little trinkets and they don't actually even care that much.
I love how the powers that be turn the lights off on you as you went against goodie bags. So clearly like, we're talking about something where there have been a number of stores in the country that have closed their locations over the course of 2025. Like, I know, I'm trying to remember, there's a party store that, like, Party City closed like all their locations in the country. And I was like, what will we do for birthday parties that need goodie bags and kitsch and like that kind of stuff? And like, I completely agree with you that like, I find that that kind of stuff in kids' lives is a little bit difficult in that I work as a behaviorist. And so often I'm working on, with parents where they'll say like, I don't want to give my kids rewards for like doing behaviors. And I'm like, no. Like, it can be fine because we're all a balance of like external and internal reinforcement. And I tell people all the time, like, I love my work with the Child Mind Institute, but if I won the lottery, and I could do only the parts of my work at Child Mind that I want to do, I just wouldn't do paperwork. Like, the only reason I do paperwork is because they won't pay me unless I do the paperwork. And that's where the external reinforcement comes in. I would love to still work with patients and do things like this and that kind of stuff. So, like, we all need a little bit of it. But then, like, when we have all these goodie bags and things like that, it sours parents on when they really need to use this stuff and like promise their kids a little bit of slime for using the potty or being nice to their sister when they're getting it at every single birthday party. So going back to the notion of like participation trophies, I mean, like, for me, it's that I love the coaches who turn participation trophies into self-esteem exercises. So like the league may decree it. This may be Parks and Rec in your hometown. They're giving everybody a ribbon. They're giving everybody a trophy, like whatever it is. And like I'll see the youth coaches who are like, let me go through each player and let me talk about like where they tried hard at their bar, like at their level. This soccer season, you really worked on passing. This particular, time between musical recitals, like you really progressed in your sight reading of music, that kind of stuff, where like they can say, here's this skill I saw you work on and here's how you grew, versus like just saying you showed up, like you were here.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that, sort of like putting something that's actual content to the thing, the trophy, and then that trophy symbolizes what they were told.
Well, it's not like giving just an MVP trophy. It's not just saying like, here's participation trophies and here's like Bryce or Jessica who got the MVP of the team. It's like, here's how each person grew, and we're going to kind of like appreciate that and let you see that like, maybe you're not the best at swimming or violin or, drawing, but we saw your effort. Like, we see you trying, we see you kind of building this. So I know one of the things that we were talking about even before we got to this conversation was you were talking about like the beauty of mistakes and how those contribute to self-esteem. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different situations that kids are in where it's not turning out the way they want it to. It's not perfect. And they need to learn to be able to tolerate that, or even like turn it into something beautiful. So like my kids have this book called Beautiful Oops. And it's this idea that when you think that you've made a mistake, you can think of it as an opportunity to make something beautiful. So like if you made the tail of your tiger too long, like, oh, maybe it's just a really cool, like magical tiger that has a long tail. So it doesn't have to be like what you wanted it to be for you to accept it and still think of it in a positive way. So it's,
Well, and I was thinking when you talked about like books that we really like with kids, like one of the books I've really liked reading with elementary school kids is this book, Rosie Revere, which, is terrific about this like notion, like obviously it's also honoring like World War II, like sacrifices that women made in building planes and warehouses and factories. So it's kind of like a whole history aspect to it. We could talk about like that kind of thing. But the whole book is focused on the beauty, especially when you're like engineering or trying things in science, of like trying a bunch of stuff and then seeing what works and realizing that it's in the trying that there's value, not necessarily in like making sure that your plane flies as much as you wanted to, in the case of Rosie Revere, this character. And like when kids have those kind of stories, I think it helps them to relate relate back to it and kind of say like a mistake doesn't mean this is the moment where I knock over everything, leave the soccer field, tell everybody I quit, pack my toys up and go home. It's an opportunity to like kind of come back to it and like do a little bit of a debrief, figure out what might have worked. Like, how do we move forward and like figure this out? So
Yeah.
I will say, like, just as a last kind of closing question, I feel like we've talked a lot during this about self-esteem and like how we're building it as parents in those moments when we play the biggest role developmentally. So like we play a huge role up until the tween years, doing exactly what we've talked about, providing love, structuring exposure to activities, and then making sure that kids have these challenges that can help them build self-esteem for themselves.
Yeah.
As kids get into the teen years, like, what do we say to parents about how we keep teens feeling good about themselves? I realize it's a big loaded question for like the last 2 minutes, but go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. I think, as teens are spending more time with peers, there's a lot of like comparison, and they look to the peers to give them that unconditional love, and they're not always getting it. So it is tough, and I think it's about, but remembering to continue to be in the background, like you're still there. It's sort of like the attachment theory, sort of like they can go far and they're always going to come back to you as a secure base. So keep, when they talk, listen. When they want to hang out with you, like drop everything and do it, or take those opportunities in the car when you're driving to, have a little convo. So you can still play a role in the background. And then also, I think just being cognizant of like the social media and screen time stuff, I think just like helping them make sure that they're not like constantly scrolling and comparing themselves to other people. Like they need help cutting themselves off from that, even though you want them to be able to do it themselves. Oh, I think another company must be mad at me.
I think this is an endearing aspect of the podcast, is that the motion sensor lights turn off apparently whenever you anger powers that be. Like you started talking negatively about the impact comparison effects on social media. You're in Silicon Valley. I'm just saying, like, that's why it happens.
Yeah, they heard me.
But you were saying about comparison effects before the lights went off. I mean, the thing is, we talk about this a little bit as well on the teen episode of this podcast, where it's just that, these are big challenges for teenagers in critically thinking about how they're building their identity in a world of social media comparison effects and an online world where there's really no escape from all this comparison. And so helping to your point, drop everything when you can, or when there's a moment to work through something with your teen because they are working through stuff. It's like really, really helpful. I will also just say one other point that I want you to throw in that I know is something I've heard you talk about. When we talk about like exposure to activities, I want to make sure we include a point for parents on exposure to activities versus overscheduling. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think parents do need to be careful about overscheduling. I get that they want to expose their kids to many things, and that's very nice. But it's too much. They're running around, and it's hard for the family too. The parents are working, and then they have like a nanny who's like driving one kid somewhere else, and then the mom is driving. Like it's just a lot of scheduling, and then I don't even think that the kids like really gain as much from those activities as you want them to, because they're just like bouncing around all the time. Yeah.
Well, and I think what it made me think of when you made that note is just that, and I was thinking of an example of one of my kids where it's like, not having downtime doesn't allow you to like tinker or explore on your own. If all your time is structured, and I understand the pressure on a lot of parents today where they think, I need to schedule my kid. Like there's a lot of also like, especially among high schoolers, like a feeling like they should be scheduled because obviously like college applications are coming up. And so they'll need to talk about some of the activities they're doing and all the cool stuff that they're engaging in. And so like, there's this pressure to say like, I want to enroll them in everything. I want them to be able to have whatever talent they're going to have. And I think about the fact that like, we push, for example, our eldest to get involved in all kinds of stuff. And Our youngest would sign up for every activity we signed her up for, no matter what, at any time. Our eldest is like, nah, to like 99% of the things in the world. But in his downtime, he started to teach himself extra songs on his third grade recorder that like he didn't play when he was actually in music, but they send all the kids home with like a recorder at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And he got so good at the recorder, he decided to tell us that he thinks he might try the cello in his fourth grade orchestra, which is like awesome. We're like over them. My wife, who's also a psychologist, is like sitting there, and we're both like trying like not to go crazy about it because like we're trying to let it be self-driven, but we're like so excited that he's like engaged with something. But it's like, without the downtime, like if he'd had only the schedule, I don't think he would have discovered music in the same way. And like that is also really valuable, like that.
So valuable. Yeah. Allowing them to have intrinsic motivation to find things.
And as we've discussed, it's no problem having extrinsic motivation, but we just want a balance in those things. So I think that's a good note for us to pause on. For those of you interested in more resources, undoubtedly, we'll be having Dr. Jenny Louie back for another episode, perhaps in the Child Mind Institute podcast season 2, on something related to self-esteem or more about beautiful oopses. You can also find in the notes on this podcast a number of articles on childmind.org that relate to this particular topic, as well as videos and curated resources from our Positive Parenting Thriving Kids series. And we hope that you'll visit those things and continue to join us for other podcast episodes in the future, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again to Dr. Jenny Louie for joining me today. I really appreciated our conversation on how to build healthy self-esteem in kids, and how small shifts in how we talk, listen, and support our children can make a big difference in how they see themselves. As we head into back-to-school season, I also want to remind you that the Child Mind Institute offers a huge library of free, practical resources to help families and educators navigate the challenges that can come up during the school year, from managing anxiety to supporting kids with learning disorders or ADHD. We've just launched a brand new hub for teachers with guides, tools, and strategies for supporting mental health, behavior, and learning in the classroom. Whether you're managing tough behaviors, helping a student who's struggling to read, or supporting a child through a traumatic experience, you'll find expert-backed information that's easy to use and grounded in what actually helps kids thrive. We've linked to the new Resources for Teachers page in our show notes, so be sure to check it out. And one more thing, we now offer a monthly newsletter for people working in schools called Child Mind Institute in Schools. I know, it's very original. It's written for teachers, school counselors, administrators, anyone supporting kids in a school setting, and it's full of timely tips and resources you can use right away. You'll find a link to sign up in the show notes as well. Thanks again for joining me on the Thriving Kids podcast, and see you next time.